Hello, folks. This is Mike Reynolds of Ability Maine. I'm a long-term writer. I used to be the webmaster, but we have a much more intelligent woman that does the HTML for our website, so now I focus on writing. I have for the last 5 years or so about, and this is my first story time. It's a 50-year-old something. It's also probably one of the most difficult story times I've ever done. It's been over 2 months that I've done a story time. The last time we did a story time was in September. After that I took a break. I went to Texas for a while, week and a half, for a brief vacation. I was home for about 2 weeks when the events of October 25th happened in my hometown, when a gunman shot and killed 18 people at 2 different locations. Both locations are about 2.5 miles from my house, and I've been to both of them numerous times, and 18 people killed, 13 people wounded. It's right now the largest mass shooting in American, on American soil for this year, which is kind of like one superlative I didn't want to talk about ever. People, honestly, you can't imagine how it is to not know it, to have to live through a mass shooting incident in your hometown. To be clear, I'm 50 years old. I lived in Lewiston my entire life. I grew up in Lewiston, which was about 5 miles away from Lewiston, maybe about 2 miles away from the actual city lines, if you want to be technical about it. Literally, I lived right over the border. I lived about 5 miles from where I live now. And besides college, I've lived in Lewiston my entire life. Even though I've worked in Portland and worked in Augusta, I've always considered Lewiston home. And it hasn't even been a month, and it doesn't feel real. It feels so surreal. It's hard because there's so much to talk about, and so much to discuss, and so much to try and focus on, and it's overwhelming. It's completely and utterly overwhelming to start. October 25th was my best friend's birthday. Actually, it was several of my friends' birthdays. I just got my car back today from being repaired. It's back in the shop, which I guess is like just this uncomfortable feeling. It's sort of like kind of makes sense. So, yeah, and it's hard. I mean, if you're not aware of the 18 people who died, 4 of them were in the deaf and hard hearing community, and it was often really difficult for members of the deaf community to even get basic information in the first few hours of the lockdown, because there was no interpreters. And then when there was interpreters, the Associated Press was blocking them out of the live radio feeds. And this, even after the state police pleaded with media to keep them in, the Associated Press would block the interpreters out. I read an incredible story by Carla Levin with help from Penelope Overton at thepressherald.com, which is the Portland Press Herald. The Portland Press Herald, the Lewiston Sun Journal, have been doing incredible work as journalists in this. They've not been sensationalistic. They've been very reserved. They've been very honest. They've been very open. They've been asking very tough questions. And it's hard. I mean, there's no way you could ever prepare yourself for this. Everyone who says they can't imagine it happening at their place, and when it does, you just can't. The utter horror of this is so insane that you just don't know how to deal with this. I mean, your mind can't even wrap your head around it, because if you don't know somebody died, your neighbor does, or your friend of a neighbor does, or your friend's parents of a neighbor does. And, you know, those all trickle in, and then you realize that you went to school with some of these people, and you met some of these people possibly at social functions for disabled people, and you may or may not know them, or may not remember them, but you do remember, you know, the fact that, you know, your best friend worked with this a person that is no longer here. And it's frustrating, I guess. In that article, there was some real discussion about how difficult it was for people in the deaf community to even get interpreters at the hospitals, and to get interpreters in place for emergencies like that. And thankfully, to her credit, Janet Mills is doing a lot of work in trying to prepare that, and change that and repair that, and so that's good. And if you live in Lewiston or in Maine and you need to get mental health services, or you need to get services, if you're a person that is looking for support, by all means, please check out lewistonmaine.gov. That's the state of Maine's website. I'm sure they have the most up-to-date resources for local mental health resources. I know that they've just received a $1.8 million grant from the Maine Community Foundation to more mental health services. I know that there's tons of work being done to make sure people can eat. For Thanksgiving, there's a bunch of places on Facebook. I'm not going to go through them all right now because I don't know what's available, and I'm not going to go trying to spew for tons of information. Although I know that a lot of Lewiston Facebook groups are saying that I'm trying to think. I know a lot of them. I know Governor's will open in the morning. I know they're doing some sort of takeout and lunch, and so Governor's in Lewiston is doing something. I'm not sure what else is, but as someone who has grown up here, who has, you know, been gone to Lewiston school since third grade, it's really hard to even begin to discuss how messed up this was. And beyond the shooting, we were in lockdown for nearly 2 days, which makes, like, for people with severe disabilities, before, even for basic frame of reference, after the lockdown, there's 150 trucks on the side of the highway from just Walmart that couldn't be unloaded because they weren't. There was no one there to unload them because Lewiston was on lockdown, so nobody could get to work to unload to unload trucks. That means, for 2 days we didn't get mail, which means it took a lot longer to get mail back. Which means that if you rely on medication from out of state or medical supplies from out of state, you were really SOL. And really like scrambling to try and find supplies. And it's really kind of scary when you think about it, about how much, especially if you live in a community that's rural, you rely on like supplies that you can only get through Amazon or through, shipping. Something that needs to be shipped and delivered through mail. And if, something that just goes beyond words, like a lockdown, because, you're, there's a person who was shooting, multiple mass shooting going on, you don't plan for that. It just happens and you're kind of like, stuck. And, I think that's what my biggest, takeaway from this is just that there's so many things that, if you, depending on your disability, really changes if you need medication, if you need dialysis, if you need food. Literally the day after, the shooting happened on Wednesday night. Thursday, everything was closed. By Friday, the convenience stores were open, didn't have any bread, barely had any milk. You couldn't find anything that was open in the entire county. And people were driving 40 miles to Oxford County to Walmart to get food because people got paid on Fridays and they needed to feed their families. And it was kind of ridiculous and kind of scary and kind of dystopian because this stuff was all happening in real time. While I was, trying to, while there was a person on the list, trying to get food and medical supplies and stuff. And, it just was very uncomfortable. I guess that's a word I kept, and surreal and uncomfortable. And, very quiet, very, quiet, but yet, you'd have, the only thing you would hear would be, choppers in the distance, and, sirens. And when you did go out, you saw, police armored vehicles, on Main Street, and media from all over the world. Again, surreal is beyond the word. And those businesses that were targeted, Storytime Recreation was one of the first places in Maine that had accessible, that was ADA compliant because it was built in the early 90s, right after it was passed. The ADA was passed and literally became a place where a lot of people with disabilities had events because it was accessible. I went to events at camp through there. It's the camp that the nonprofit Johnson overseas Planetary Society worked for, but nonprofit that funds Ability Maine holds events at Pine Creek Camp. So yeah, that's, and Spanky's, has this hard of hearing quote-unquote league, and I've been to Spanky's before, and I've gone with friends, back when I used to play, was much more able, but, and younger, but, it was a normal, regular, blue collar, everybody exception type thing. I never felt any sort of fear or hatred there. And Lewiston's not really a fear and hatred place, and, it's sad the guy had to come and vote it and just, make us infamous for this. The thing that Lewiston was most famous for was the alley fight before this, and we were gritty and we were cool, and we are cool. We're Lewiston strong, don't get me wrong. But it's not something you want to be dealing with on any level. I mean, it's just the psychic drain of the mass shooting affects everyone in this community, and it will for years. I bet you, I would love to hear about mental health comparisons between places where there's been mass shootings, places where there haven't been mass shootings, and whether it's changed their life expectancy or not. I think it has, and if not in basic ways, maybe not mental health, but certainly maybe in like heart conditions or something secondary. I don't know. I mean, it's stuff I never would have thought of before had I not been through a mass shooting. And it's uncomfortable. It's beyond uncomfortable. It's surreal. It's scary. It's dumbfounding. It makes you question everything. Makes you grateful to be alive. Thanksgiving means so much more this year. And I was lucky, my family is fine. My sister was across the street from me, was home in time, and actually I was, never mind, none of that matters. This feels cathartic, even though I'm just not trying to be. I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm just trying to, explain what this felt like as a journalist who didn't just fly in from the New York Times, and oh my god, their writing was absolutely horrific. When they were talking about wooded areas in north of the city, and it was just absolutely fucking, just ridiculous. And I mean, I'm a subscriber, which is like cringe. And by all means, as a journalist, as a writer, my heart and my hat goes off to anyone that was writing during this time. I don't know how they were doing it. I don't know how you do that stuff when you're, looking at people you probably know, probably people you know through working and stuff. I mean, obviously, journalists aren't just, vacuums. They have quite the opposite. They talk to everybody, they know everybody. They often know things before the general public does. And it's, infuriating to see fights breaking out over who's selling which, benefit t-shirt or whatever, how much money or profit's going to each t-shirt or which logo or whatever, and that's not really important to me. To me, it's really important that people, get the support they need. If they need mental health support, get it. If you live outside the city of Lewiston or outside of Sargent County, call 211 and ask if there's any other supports. I know that there's other supports via 800 numbers. I know there's support probably specifically for people who are deaf and hard of hearing that I don't know about, that I wish I did. And I wish I could tell you how much more important this is. I mean, I can't begin to tell you the amount of emotion I've gone through, the amount of stress I've gone through, how difficult it is to go through seeing your city convulse in vigils from going from politics to vigils in a matter of hours, from a lockdown was just cathartic, but also anxiety inducing. I mean, I was going to go to a vigil and I realized that I just couldn't deal with that many people. Or the rain, or the cold, or being outside. The vigil I was going to go to ended up being room for 1,000. I think 25,000 showed up. So that tells you how strong the support for people have been here. And it's been, humbling. I mean, the president was a wow for me on the 3rd, which was weird because everything was closed down. We couldn't get anywhere till we left. So, like, my roommate and me couldn't even go do our baking stuff because the president was in town. No offense, I voted for him. I like Joe Biden a lot. He's awesome. You got my vote, Joe. You got my vote. Don't want to let Donald Trump. Definitely don't want to let Donald Trump. So, but it's just those things that, like, when that whole thing, when Biden's visit came, it was great, but the whole city was basically shut down because of Biden's visit a week after we'd just been shut down. So it was kind of weird. And I'm not saying that, please don't take that as a negative. It's just, it is what it is. And it's something that, I think anybody that, if you live through it, you'd be like, yeah, like, it makes sense. If you would be quite, you could see how that could cause some issues. But I'm glad the president came. I think it's, I think it's important. I think it's great that he met with, members of the families and stuff. But it's hard. I mean, again, I can't express to you how difficult it is. And again, Lewiston.gov will have tons of information on resources for support locally. And I know St. Mary's and Lewiston and CMMC and tons of other providers around here. I know that on December 2nd, we're having a holiday festival. The city is real on Main Street. We're, I think it's called Defense Center. It's where the Maltese across the street from where the plaza where Breaking News used to be. So I think there's going to be a event there December 2nd, from 12 to 5:30, a holiday event. Lewiston has a huge Muslim population, like 40% Somalian, and so it's going to be a good holiday event. Plus, we have a Jewish, large Jewish population too, and it'll be a nice place to see people locally. I'm sure there's probably a lot more disability rights stuff going on right now. I'm trying to think. I know that in Maine that there was some constitutional amendments that went up about changing the Maine Constitution to allow people who have mental health guardians to vote. Actually, all it does is change the Constitution. The right to vote has already been established via a federal law or federal ruling in 2000. I'm sorry. After the 97, there was a referendum in 2000 about that, and it failed. And then there was a court challenge, and that passed. And so the right to vote does exist. um, although all that amendment do is change the amendment so that it would reflect that it didn't pass. But given that the amendment doesn't nullify the pre-existing court ruling, the right to vote still exists. So it was just basically a procedural vote, and it's just frustrating that ableism gets to be so put in our society in 2023. But of course, that was right after a huge media story about supposedly a mentally ill mass shooter. So maybe it's not a big surprise. But then again, Mainers also decided to not allow out-of-state ballot collections in the Constitution, even though the courts ruled that that's not legal, and out-of-state money or out-of-country money in the Constitution. Again, courts have already found that Mainers largely didn't want to change the Constitution, so it's not a huge thing, but from a perspective, it's just from a disability rights perspective, it doesn't pass the smell test. It definitely is like ableism, and it's definitely like there was no major push for it. There was no real media or hype about it whatsoever about it. So maybe it was just a misinformation or just no information, so therefore people just didn't really look at it and think about it. And we were so bombarded by anti-CMP ads that literally you can't imagine how long these things were going on for. That by the time people went to vote, CMP won their referendum. You could kind of scratch your head as to how, but I guess if you put millions of dollars into a referendum, you can get your results that you want. So I guess that's what happens. Maybe you can buy the elections, Virginia. I don't know. But anyway, there's so much that's happened in the past 2 months, since 2.5 months since I've last done a story time, that there's no way that I could continue to get anything near as much needed to continue, and I certainly can't do it all in this one story time. So I'm gonna let it go for now, and hope you have a great holiday. Be thankful for what you can do, and I'm gonna try and update the Ability Maine site, or if not our site, at least our Facebook page with more information on how to help the victims of the Lewiston shooting. Again, this is literally right in my hometown, and I've been working for Ability Maine since 2009. So again, this is literally right in our home area, the Sandmans, where Washington's always been located. This tragedy goes far beyond Lewiston. Most of the people who were shot were not from Lewiston. They came into town because Lewiston's a place that has, bowling alleys and pool bars that billiard bars that people go to and flock to. And it's frustrating, and it's sad, and people from South China, South Paris, and in Maine there is a South Paris and there is a South China. They're not that far away. They're about an hour and a half away from each other. And we're all grieving, and I guess if you can laugh at some of this stuff, or at least smile, it helps when you can't even imagine the horror you've been through. And I'm lucky. I mean, I didn't hear a shooting. I saw some really, really, really intense police cruisers go by when I was out on the day of the shooting. I was literally on Main Street when the shooter was going from point A to point B, from just in time to Spanky's. I was somewhere in the area that he was trying to go through, so I probably saw 100 police officers go by at once. And it was just surreal. That's the only way I can mention it. And next week I'll be back with more information and more historical facts and more media and stuff. But let's call this a day, and hopefully again have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for watching and listening. Peace. And thanks for your prayers for Lewiston, Maine. FTP, it's hard for me to do the thing. Heart? I don't know. Like, I don't know. Heart. Yeah. Peace. Heart. Yeah, okay, that works. Have a happy Thanksgiving.